Neither did anyone try to go and talk to the man on the ground. They didn't take his pulse. All they did was filmed as though, they were going to get paid for this video. Well, the thing that troubled me about it is that nowadays these type of things are almost normal for some people. It's not shocking hardly to anybody anymore. And instead of people trying to intervene to, say, hey, calm down, calm down. The first thing people said is, she the one, take her to jail, throw her in jail. I'm not justifying running over anybody with the car. But what I am saying is that in the time we live in, people, we must maintain our code of conduct, and we must be prepared for the things that were not normal to be normal now. You're subject to see anything before your eyes. We can't be reactors, and at times we can't be responders. We've got to know what to do, but we've got to be listening and sensitive to the Ruach HaKodesh, because we need to make sure that we're doing everything we know how to maintain our code of conduct. It's important that we don't allow ourselves to get pushed over to the point that we're willing. Now, unless you're defending yourself, understand what I'm about to say. Now, if you're defending yourself, that's one thing. But we get to the point to where we are pushed to where we are willing to commit murder or almost murder somebody. Now, listen to what I'm saying. If you're defending yourself, and hear what I'm saying, and at the time the car is the only thing that you have to defend yourself, to get away from a person, then that's what you must do. But to deliberately run over someone is not justifiable. And I'm not taking her side and I'm not taking his side. But what I am saying, as a people, there is a code of conduct that we must maintain. Never let someone get you so angry to where you get, you know how they said, you get so angry that you don't see anything but blood. Or your and actually that does happen. You get so angry, what happens is your blood pressure begins to boil. And when your blood pressure gets that high, you do see red. You begin to see red, and people they say, oh, I feel lightheaded. I feel like I'm about to pass out, like they're about to hyperventilate. That's because your blood is rushing to your head, because you've gotten so aggravated, you've gotten so angry with the situation or whatever it is, that now you can't compose yourself and you can't walk away from it. That is an issue. And because we are under a lot of pressure, to say you're not under pressure, to me would say to be a lie. Now, understand, being under pressure and crumbling under pressure are two different things. Because we're at a point in our lives that we've got to be willing to understand how to deal with pressure in the Abba. Remember, because he told us, if we keep our mind stayed on him, he'll keep us what? And perfect alone. So does that mean automatically we are removed from the pressures of life? Absolutely not. We become the perfect candidate. So it's important that we understand how to deal with pressure, abnormal pressure, unrealistic pressure. We have to be able to deal with it. But how do we deal with it? In the writings. We stay steeped and embedded in the writings, and the writings are to stay steeped and embedded in us. The writings also tell us to get angry, but sin not. I can be angry with the person and get upset with them. But when it gets to the point that now I get to a point where I want to physically harm them, that's an issue. That's a problem. And as a people, we need to be here for one another. We need to be here to where if it ever gets to that point that we can say, hey, I need to talk to somebody because I'm to a point where I'm about to bust. And if I don't talk to somebody and I don't really get this off my heart, I might do something that I'm going to regret, because the heat of passion can cause you to do a lot of crazy things. So I'm just saying this as a people, let us please be mindful, because every yom that we walk out the doors to go, whether it's to pay a bill, whether it's to buy food, you don't know what is going to happen before your eyes. But it's important that we stay prayed up, and we stay focused, and we keep our heads on a swivel. In other words, when you're going, you're constantly looking, you're constantly checking out what your surroundings are like. And before we step one foot outside, we pray, Abba Yahuwah, I pray your governing and your guidance and your protection over my life. And is this the way I'm supposed to go? Am I supposed to go this way? And if not, be willing to humble ourselves and not go that way. It's better to relinquish on something and not go away than to go there and end up losing your life, or you take a person's life. Because let me tell you something, the pressure that many of these people are under, you could go in, you can see it on people's faces. You go in, you smile at people, or you go in with a gesture of, how are you, or what have you. And some people look at you like, well, how do you think I am? How are we? What is there to be happy about? What am I to celebrate about? You don't understand. Once I do this, I got to go home. There's nowhere else for me to go. You follow what I'm saying? Yeah. We're basically homebound, many of us. And many people don't have anybody to talk to or deal with. And you can deal with people all day over the internet. All day. But when it's all said and done, dealing with people face to face, touchable, tangible, that's really what people are wanting. Mm-hmm. So we got to learn how to stay prayed up, and stay focused and vigilant, and not let the Torah depart out of our mouths. Mm-hmm. Because whatever comes out of our mouths is what we're going to really start focusing on, what we will basically start moving towards. Mm-hmm. So it is important. So just something to encourage you to maintain and keep our code of conduct. And if you see somebody getting out of character, our people, just pull them to the side. One thing I've learned, to diffuse a bomb, people are going to post what they're going to post, and people feel like, and they have a right. They have a right for a freedom of speech and choice or what have you. But in order to keep things diffused, sometimes it's best just to go in and message them. Mm-hmm. Don't post it up, blatantly. Everybody else may do it, but go to them in private. Remember, we're supposed to go to one another in private and restore those. Sure. Restoration can't take place if they feel like, hey, you're attacking me. It's important that we use wisdom when we are trying to keep our people on the right track or put them back on the right track. Hey, maybe you could have worded that differently. Maybe you could have done that differently. It's important that we understand these things, understand the tactics and the devices of the enemy. Mm-hmm. Divide and conquer. We don't want that to happen. It's enough of things going on. We have enough of things to deal with as a people. We don't need to add to it. So it's important that we understand how to diffuse a bomb, or how to diffuse it before it becomes a bomb. Before we even jump into something, pray about it. And even if it does, if the Ruach has told you to do this, then guess what? Whatever follows, you've done what you were instructed to do. Mm-hmm. But before we do anything, we ought to always pray and make sure that we are not the problem. Mm-hmm. Always be an answer or bring a solution. Never bring a greater problem to the problem. Mm-hmm. And it is so.
And it is so.
All right. We are back in our class once again, teaching Unmasking the End Time Beast. Last week we talked about let me get his name. Salahuddin Abil, I think that's his name. Ayyubi. And we spoke on he was a great warrior for Islam. He had a family, and he was a defender of the weak, and he did a lot of things to them. And the reason why I say great is because that's what they called him, a great warrior. And why is it important? Because he is an ancestor, or he was a Kurd, and he's a part of the Medes. Yes, the Medes. Just want to make sure. The Kurds happen to be descendants of the Medes. And so knowing who he was, his character, what his goal was, and his motives helps us to understand these people, the Medes, because they're descendants. History is so important. This is how we know a lot of things about ourselves, because of our ancestors and forefathers. When we look at their willingness to comply, when we look at their willingness to do whatever We know that the Europeans told them, we understand why they did these things. They were disobedient and hard-headed. And because they didn't want to listen to the Abba, many of them said, well, we'll just do what we've been doing instead of turning back to him. And many times you wonder, well, why are they so docile? Why are they so rebellious? Or why are they like rebels? Because it's in us, because we know that these are some of the things that our ancestors, that was in the blood of our ancestors. Why do we yet have people like, which it's, I want to say this and I don't mean it to be negative, but you ask the question, why are there no more Malcolm X's rising up? Why are there no more, I won't say Martin Luther King Jr., because we don't need people that were sellouts. We don't need people at the end really dealing with a lot of stuff that we dealt with. That's not to be disrespectful, but the more we look into the history in his life, we find out a lot of things he was coerced into saying and doing. And in the end, when he found out it was not for the betterment of our people, that's when he wanted to start pulling our people out. But what happened to the people that said, hey, it's time to make a difference? Not saying that we don't have people out there, but when it comes to our people having spokesmen and having spokeswomen, not just men, having people on the front line that says, hey, y'all, this is what has to be done. And this, unless this is done, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And so we find that we do have people that will speak up, but there's only so far that people are going to go. Why? Because people want to live. Nobody wants to take a bullet in the back of their head. And I'm not saying that you should. Nobody wants to be standing up and then somebody assassinates you. Nobody wants to say, well, you know what? I know this is coming, so it's might as well get it over with. And that way my family can be free of these things. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to die for a cause. We want to live for the cause. And there's nothing wrong with that. Are y'all following me? Because guess what? Spilling our blood don't bring us closer to nobody. It's just that now we gone and we cannot finish the work if that happens. So it's not the point of us looking for people to die, but looking for people to carry that torch. And so when you see people that have done this and they're in a place of oppression, and now it's like, okay, these people are really being oppressed. These are some of the people that's going to be used in the end time. They in other words, that what has been in them is still building up. And when it is time for it to be released, these people are not going to be able to be bought. These people are not going to settle. These are the people that when it's time for them to have the opportunity to wreak havoc on those that wreaked havoc on them, do you not know that they are going to do it without a problem? They don't care about anybody's life. Why? Because right now they're saying nobody cares about our lives. Are y'all following me? Yeah. So you got to understand this is kind of what's building up. I want to read some more of this and then we're going to get into who we're going to talk about on Tiyam. In Revelations 18 and 10, and our topic is coming from chapter 13 of Revelations. And once again, our subtopic is we're talking about Lucifer is not, Lucifer is, let me get his name, y'all. I'm sorry. His name is Helel bin Shachar. So we're going to learn about this on Tiyam. Most important, really, this is the reason why we need to learn about him, because if anybody has been in Christianity for any length of time, if you came out of Christianity, if you went to a service and they just happened to be teaching or preaching on Yashiyah 14, you've heard the sermon, and how it was dramatized and how Shaitan was knocked out of Shemayim, and we beheld him falling as light to the earth, and it's dramatized. And the pastors and the preachers had us on our feet, and we were dancing and jumping and shouting because we believed that it was Michael the archangel that slapped him out of heaven because of his foolishness, and we're thinking that this is a demonic spirit, and so forth and so on. When in the reality of it, it was not a demonic spirit at all. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
So we're going to cover that on Tiyam, and we're going to look at it. We're going to show history, and we're going to show the things that came about and the lies. Now, many of us, like I said in the beginning, some of us, it is just a refresher and to encourage us. And for many of us, it is something we're learning for the first time. Once again, Christianity has done a job on us as a people when it comes to understanding the writings. They flipped it and did it so that it would fit their personal agenda, which helps us not at all. Because when these things are in place and the path of the outline and so forth, or the map for our lives has been distorted and just truly just dismembered and put here and put there, then you can't follow the path correctly until the map is put back in its proper place or put back the way it's supposed to, then we're in trouble. And these two people are very important to us in understanding unmasking the end time beast. It's important, very important. So in Revelations, once again, 18 and 10, it says, standing at a distance for fear of her torment, saying, alas, alas, that great city America is Babylon. Many of us have been told that New York is Babylon. This is Babylon. And so it's important that we understand this is not Babylon. Are y'all following me? Yeah. It is not Babylon. And so the scripture tells us that the destruction of Babylon has been prophesied in Yashar chapter 13 and 14. We looked at chapter 13 last week, and now we're going to check out chapter 14. And so it's very important that we maintain, we learn once again about Salahuddin, and we learn about him and his connection to the Medes, because the Kurds and the Medes are descendants of one another. And so now we're in 14 because now we want to understand what's going on. It's important that we know what's going on. Understand Babylon is a real place, and Babylon had real kings and real people that resided there. Yeah. And so we cannot take it and try to, in other words, make everything spiritual. There are things that are spiritual, just as there are things that are natural, and vice versa. But you cannot spiritualize a natural place, because when you do so, you displace things and they have to be moved out of the way. This is what has caused and continues to cause many problems with us as a people, because we're believing, okay, if we get out of America, we're getting out of Babylon. And scripture does not line up with that. Are y'all following me? All right. Now, once again, very important. We can see that in Yashar 13 and 17, something key that the Medes would practice or participate, in the destruction of Babylon. This is a key to unlock some of this prophecy. That is why it is important that we never just go off of information without proof. And without, I always say this, proof, and without our evidence. Thank you. Evidence and proof. It's important that we have both of those things. Without them, you have no case. And it has always been important. You know, when you ever watch movies, cop movies back in the day, and you would see them, especially if you've ever watched, what's the man name? Not Sylvester Stallone. I see him in my head. I can't think of his name. But if
Horatio.
you ever,
Horatio?
No, not Horatio. No, the movies, not the weekly shows. He did karate, and now they make jokes of him on Steven Seagal. If you ever watch Steven Seagal movies, you always see it's the bad cop, and he has to come in and basically show them up for their dirt and for doing wrong. Well, there was one incident where he had with him what's the girl name? Not Foxy Brown. But she was she's an older actress. And anyway, they had this guy cornered, and the bad cop shot him, and he knew he didn't have a gun because he was an innocent bystander. He just came out the door of his apartment, which I don't know why you come out the door of your apartment and you hear shooting. Normally when that happens, we run inside, duck, and cover. And we don't come out to about 2 days to make sure everything is clear. But in this incident, the man came outside of his apartment to see what was going on. The police draw down on him and shot him. And when he shot him, he realized he was an innocent man. So what he did, he had a gun on his ankle. That's the gun that they normally would use back in the day. And it's for real. This was not just a movie, but this was really happening, where people would find evidence of a gun on a person. But evidence without proof is invalid, because it may be true a gun was there, but there was no proof, because if the man's fingerprints are not on the gun, then you're just going off of evidence that was placed there. So they had to go through all this stuff to prove that this man was guilty. And back in that day, especially if it was a black man that had a gun by him, they never ran that unless somebody challenged them, unless there was a lawyer that challenged them to prove that the man had powder or gunpowder residue on his hands, and that his fingerprints were found on the gun. So most of the time when they would do it, they would take the gun and put the fingerprints on it, but without the evidence. Lawyers were crooked. So you got to have evidence as well as proof when it comes to these things. And most of the time, the only proof we have is that America is horrible because America allowed slavery to take place. America allowed these things. Those things are bad. And don't get me wrong, they are horrible. But unless we have information to substantiate that this is Babylon, then guess what we're doing? We're just babbling about a whole lot of stuff because it up from somebody else. And it is so, because we pick these things up from other people and we tend to run with it. So they say it's Babylon. We do the same thing. Why? Because they're devils here. There's devils everywhere, everywhere. So it's important that we understand those things. It's important, though, because we are narrowing down these things so that we can get to the bottom of who this beast is, who this group of people are. Who are they and where are they? These are things that are important for us to know. Once again, today the Kurds, Yashar 13 and 17, I'm sorry. Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them. I regard silver and as for gold, they will not delight in it. In other words, they will not and cannot be paid off. Exacting revenge, because the Abba is going to them to do these things. Today the Kurds happen to be the descendants of the Medes, and it will be very difficult to see the Kurds coming up to destroy the USA or Europe. That is completely out of focus and simply living in a fantasy land. Scholars seeing this destruction simply assume that this took place in 539 BC. But the problem remains that the destruction is permanent, and we do not see that this has ever happened in history yet. So unless we have proof that a building has been leveled or raised to the ground, then you can't say that that is that, where it cannot be repaired. It is unrepairable, or that all we see basically is a spot where it was, then we cannot basically place that there. Are y'all following me? Yeah. That is what's important, because we have a tendency, once again, because it's in us, and this is where we got to pull that up out of us because we were trained wrong, is that just because somebody says it and they have just a tiny bit to add to it, that now it must be true. Not so. Are y'all following me? Yeah. Not so. It is not so. It's important that we have proof as well as evidence to support our case. So the climax remains to be fulfilled in the very near future. Now, it's important that we understand, once again, we looked at and checked out the character and checked out Salahuddin and his part, or the character, and the Medes and how they will play a part in it. And if you go back once again and do some research on him, you will see the things that he did. He dealt with the different things. He dealt with Christianity, and he dealt with the Templars. He dealt with a lot of people, and he always came out on top because that was what he did. He was a fighter. He was a warrior. Now we come to 14 of Yashar. If you go there, I can show you, which is Isaiah chapter 14. I hope everybody got a chance to read it. All right. Well, you have it, saying it is so. All right. All right. Let us read. We're going to read chapter 14, and then we're going to go in and we're going to discuss this person who is the main person of this chapter 14. And we're going to remove the erroneous teaching and identity of this person so that we can get to the bottom and understand who this person really was. So we're going to read. I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to read 5 verses, and please read loud and clear so that our listening audience can hear you. Once again, it's very important that we understand these things. Why is it important that we understand these things? Because in understanding these things, it puts us closer to understanding what we're up against. And I think a lot of times, once again, with the teachings of, the mark of the beast is the chip in your hand. The mark of the beast, people think because a person puts a barcode on their hand, they've taken the mark. Y'all, please, you don't take the mark on your willingly. You don't put it on yourself. You're not the one that can do it. And except it is from the one that is going to be issuing it, it is not a mark.
God.
It is not a mark. That is the issue here. We constantly are posting and following up behind people saying these people taking a mark. This is how the mark gonna come. They're not authorized to give the mark out. They're not authorized because they're not the ones in authority. It is not for them. But this is what people tend to believe. Why? Because the populace believes and because it's out there.
God.
The writings tell us who is going to be in charge of that and what's going to follow that and how the setup is going to be. The atmosphere and the setup of all these things are not right. It's just like baking a cake. The oven has to be at a certain what degree in order for that cake to be. You cannot put a cake in an oven and bake it at 200. That's too low. You can't put it at 500. That's too high. So you have to put it in at 375. 375 is what they cook. And depending on your pan, if your pan is darker, it's going to take a greater amount of heat because the pan is darker. So the heat to get through the dark color of the pan, it has to be elevated by what? 0.25 degrees. Are y'all hearing me? About 25 degrees. So it's important that we understand these things. Very important that we understand these things. Why? Because the more we understand these things, the better we are prepared and the better we can help our families be prepared. And it is so. All right, chapter 14, Yashua with Isaiah, chapter 14. And we're going to read all of it. And let's begin with 5 verses. It is actually 32 verses. So we're going to read 5 apiece. Begin with you on my left. Mm-hmm.
For Yahuwah will have compassion on Yaakov, and will again choose Yasharal, and set them in their own land, and the foreigners shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Yaakov. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Yasharal shall possess them in the land of Yahuwah for servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in the day that Yahuwah shall give you rest from your sorrow, and from your fear, and from the hard bondage wherein you were made to serve, that you shall take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how has the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. Yahuwah has broken the staff of the wicked, and the scepter of the rulers, and it is so.
Finish reading as a comma there.
Okay. Verse 6. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger, is persecuted, and none hinders.
And it is so. All right. Verse 7.
And cedars of Lebanon. Now that you have lain down, none shall come up to fell us. Was astir. Chapter 13.
It's up. Okay. And it is so. All right. Verse 13. Let's continue reading.
Verse 13. You said in your heart, I will ascend to Shemaim. I will raise my throne above the stars of power. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly, on the utmost heights of the sacred mountain. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. But you are brought down to the grave, to the depths of the pit. Those who see you stare at you. They ponder your fate. Is this the man who shook the earth and made kingdoms tremble? The man who made the world a desert, who overthrew its cities, and would not let his captives go home? And it is so.
And it is so. All right. Verse 18. Let's read.
All the sovereigns of the Gentiles, all of them were laid in esteem, everyone in his own house. But you have been thrown from your grave like an abominable branch, like the garment of those who are slain, thrust through with the sword, who go down to the stones of the pit like a trampled corpse. You are not joined with them in burial, for you have destroyed your land and slain your people,
Mm.
and let the seed of evildoers never be mentioned. Prepare his children for slaughter because of the crookedness of their fathers, lest they rise up and possess the land and fill the face of the world with cities. I shall rise up against them, declares Yahuwah of hosts, and shall cut off from
Mm-hmm.
Babel the name remnant offspring, and descendant declares Yahuwah. And I shall make possession for the porcupine and marshes of muddy water, and shall sweep it with the broom of destruction, declares Yahuwah of hosts.
And so that's 5. All right. And it is so. All right. Verse 24.
Yahuwah of hosts has sworn, saying, Truly as I have planned, so shall it be.
Mhm.
And I have purposed, so it stands, to break Asher in my land, and tread him down on my mountains. And his yoke shall be removed from them, and his burden removed from their shoulders. This is the counsel that is counseled for all the earth, and this is the hand that is stretched out over all the nations. For Yahuwah of hosts has counseled, and who annuls it?
Mm-hmm.
And his hand that is stretched out, who turns it back? This is the message which came in the year that sovereign Ahaz died. Do not rejoice, all you of Philistia, that the rod that smote you is broken. For out of the serpent's roots comes forth an adder, and his offspring is a fiery flying serpent. And it is so.
And it is so. All right. It's 3 left. I'll let you read one, you read one, you read one.
Verse 3.
Mm-hmm.
And the firstborn of the poor will lie down and safe, and I will
Hell, gate.
Refuge in it. And it's so.
And it is so. Now, from what you have read, and from what you can hear with your own ears, that don't sound like people have said is Shaitan. But see, we were so inundated with how it was being said instead of what was being said. Lining it up. We always, in that time, that what they call that good old fashioned preaching. But that good old fashioned is proclamation. It was pride. I mean, that was not in the Shaitan now is fighting and warring with the real people, which is far from the truth. Because we had no evidence to prove that. We just went on what was told us. But the more you read that and you read down the verses below, you see that this is dealing with a man, a physical being, a man that can die. His life can be taken. You can't kill a spirit. Are y'all hearing me? We can anyway. I'm going to read this information to you. It says, this is from Yasharal 14 and 12. How art thou fallen from Shemaim, O Lucifer? Because some rendering says Lucifer, and some says shining one. Son of the morning, how art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? He who hears you hears me. He who hears you rejects me. And he who rejects me rejects him who sent me. Then the 70 returned with joy, saying, even the demons are subject to us in your name. And he said to them, I saw Shaitan fall like lightning from Shemaim. Behold, I give you the authority to trample on serpents and scorpions, and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the serpents, because your names are written in Shemaim. And that's Luke chapter 10, verses 16 through 20. Excuse me. Most of those who come from a Christian fundamentalist orientation, particularly from Pentecostal or charismatic backgrounds, and I can once say we were from a charismatic background, and that was the go all in, speaking in tongues, jumping and shouting, and I mean play music. I don't have anything against praising the Abba now. I don't have anything against playing music, but if I'm gonna praise him, I'm praising for truth. That's what I'm praising for. So I don't have anything against that, but let's praise him for truth, and not just because we are emotionally stirred. You know, when you hear your favorite song, you're like, oh, that's my song. Now, you know, you get that because you're like, oh man, I like that because it makes me feel like, you know, I want to move. I want to move. That's some of the stuff that happened when we were in Christianity. And I'll challenge any pastor, any bona fide pastor, to show me in the writings what you preached back then was relevant versus what is now in the writings. It was always in here that you had a right to do what you did, and you have no proof and evidence to back it up. Because we were just we were just basically aroused into a frenzy. Music, because y'all know we are a people, music, rhythm. Music does something to our hearts. You know, when you feeling down and you hear that song, it lifts you up. Or if you feeling kind of bad and you hear that song, it's like, man, that just took me even further down. But you know, we are a rhythmic people. Music is something about music with us. And movement. We like music and drums. Man, get out here and a good old bass or a lead guitar, and somebody know what they're doing on that keyboard. Get out of here. You have folk jumping and shouting out. Go to some of these congregations. What you shouting about? That music. It's just something about that music made me want to get up and dance. And the thing of it is, praising him is not wrong. What the problem is that we were praising him. We were praising him for the wrong stuff because it wasn't right. Now, once again, charismatic background are taught that there is a continual spirit preventing them from acquiring all of the greatness that the Abba has for their lives while here on earth. Excuse me. The actual spiritual warfare scripture says we are engaged in. However, it's quite different, and this is the person saying that will be discussed later. While not denying the presence of evil in the world or that demon spirits exist, in this case, these spirits are supposedly orchestrated by a central figure, and it behooves us to look at this figure in the light of what the original words of scripture actually say about him. So once again, people took this to mean that when it described him being knocked down from Shemayim, that now his whole goal is to torment us, is go around knowing who we are, the real people, and he just fights to keep us from being prosperous, and he fights it. Now, once again, not taken out of context, and because it's taken out of context, we've got to put this thing back together. Are y'all following me? Once again, it's like a roadmap being disassembled and the symbols and all that stuff being moved. Why? Because you're trying to take people to a place that doesn't really exist. And we were taken to a place that had no relevance. We just shouted and we thought, that there was a fight, and it was Michael and Lucifer, the devil, Shaitan, and they were fighting up there, and he got knocked out, and that's why he does what he does towards us, and that is far from the truth. Are y'all hearing me? That is far from the truth. Now, it's important that we understand, once again, as traditionally taught, his name is Lucifer, more commonly known as Shaitan or the devil, a rebellious archangel who, having been cast out of Shemayim to earth from the beginning for his sinful acts, has been engaged in waging a warfare with Yahuwah ever since. It will come as a surprise to many to learn that the only reference to a Lucifer in all the scripture is only found in this verse from Yasha'ah 14:12. Did y'all hear me? Supposedly describing his fall from Shemayim due to pride. And this name appears only in the King James Version or the KJV version or related versions. In spite of this rendering, however, the proper name Lucifer is not found anywhere in the original Hebrew text or even in the translated writings. Plus, to add to the confusion, Lucifer is a Latin name. One has to ask, just how did this Latin name find its way into a Hebrew manuscript written centuries before a Roman language even existed? Latin is the language of Rome. Just who in this Lucifer, and more importantly, where did he come from? So once again, it's important that we understand who created this person and why. Are y'all following me?
God.
In Hebrew, the phrase translated as the English Lucifer, son of the morning, is Helel ben Shachar, and should more accurately be translated as shining one. As you heard the reader to my left, the second reader, Cody Valor, shining one, because that's what it was. That was the name, shining one, not Lucifer. But in other renderings, what does your rendering say? What does yours say? 12.
Morning star.
Morning star. What your I know what your render say? Son of the morning. What did yours say? 14, verse 12.
Shining morning star.
Shining morning star. All right. Now, and many, it says Lucifer. It says Lucifer in it. Now, it's important that we understand translated as shining one, son of the dawn passage in the original Hebrew. The context of the whole passage of Yashar 14 is not an angel. Are y'all hearing me?
No.
I'm going to say that again. It is not about a fallen angel. Are y'all following me?
No.
Excuse me. Small words. But an obvious epithet about a fallen Babylonian king who during his lifetime had persecuted the children of Yasharal. It also contains no mention of a Shaitan either by name or reference. Why then did the translators of the King James find it necessary to insert Lucifer for shining one in this passage? The answer lies in two earlier translations. The first translation of the original Hebrew scriptures into Greek occurred 300 years before Yahush by Ptolemy Philadelphus, the Greek-speaking pharaoh of Mitzrayim, for his own library in 285 247, or 247, I'm sorry, to 285 BCE. As seen in the last article, they're talking about the article. While local culture spoke their native language among themselves, Greek was the universal language spoken between cultures, much as English is the universal language to Yam. The story circulated about this time in that 72 scholars commissioned by Pharaoh to perform this translation. So now we see we're getting somewhere. Y'all follow me?
No.
Roman numerals for 70. The original writings found in the writings of Tiyam are an English translation of this Greek Septuagint, not translated from the original Hebrew text. And translating Yashar, excuse me, 14 and 12, the 70 chose the Greek word Hesperus for the Hebrew Helel ben Shachar. Heos means in or of the morning, and phoros means that which is born or beating. This is not an exact translation of the original Hebrew, but is reasonably close. Y'all hear me?
Yeah.
As emissaries rose and fell, the fortune of languages rose and fell with them. Since Greek is a very different language than Hebrew, much of the original Hebrew meanings, nonsense, and intent became lost in the Septuagint. Through the ages, the longer the Romans ruled, the more prominent the official language of the Roman Empire became. So this is why you have the King James Version of the Bible. Ooh, excuse me. And the more they continued to utilize it and to push it, the more things became concrete and settled and set in these things. This is why when you talk to most people, especially our people that have read their Bibles, their King James Bibles from front to back, and they in a bad shape, they can quote them verses left and right, and you try to tell them, y'all, that's not right. They're willing to fight you tooth and nail because they have become so inundated and they have become so locked into those verses that when you tell them that's not the right verse, you need to get to the original, then they want to fight you tooth and nail behind it, because this is how we have been over the generations brainwashed. This is what has happened. Exactly. So now when it's all said and done, this is why many times too, when you're talking to people, they tell you, I don't believe in the devil. I don't believe in Lucifer. Now understand something. We come to understand that Lucifer was a name that was put in there, but there are demonic spirits. Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
And that's something different. But right now, focusing on this is important, because now it helps us to understand that Babylon has a physical place. And it is going to be destroyed, and that without a remedy. Are y'all following me?
Yeah.
Let it rip. Now, and that language was Latin. By 325 CE, during the reign of Constantine, the Roman Empire co-opted Gentile, Christianity, politicized it, and made it the new state religion. Now, understand what became the new state religion? Christianity. For all those diehard Christians, you know, you willing to die for Christianity, you willing to fight for Christianity, and all you are, once again, all you are is a part of the Roman Catholic Church. No matter how you try to denounce it, no matter how you try to say we're different, you call yourself a Christian. I don't care if you call yourself a born again believer. What are you born again from? To be born again means you were born out of something, or you were born away from something. So if you're born again, what are you born again from? What are you being renewed into or brought into? Now, shortly thereafter, the Latin father Jerome, 340 CE and 419 CE. Now, remember, these are people that were in the Roman church that went in. It was Marcion, Jerome, and some of the other ones that took parts of the renewed covenant, especially the writings of Rabbi Shaul, and they destroyed his writings. And so now when people read, they think that Rabbi Shaul or Rabbi Paul, is a bigot. They believe that he is a so many things. They believe that he is a hypocrite, because they said his writings did not add up. But you got to understand, he wrote in a manner that was dealing with our people. And until you unchristianize your mind, no, you won't be able to understand what he's saying. Then you got to remember, people got a hold of his letter, so they put their little input in that changed it up. Once you change it up, if you don't understand certain things and certain principles, it's going to look like he's being, a person that is a hypocrite. Are you following me? It's going to look like he's a hypocrite. But you got to understand, he ahabed Abba Yahuwah, and he ahabed the Mashiach. And that's why he was sold out to do what he needed to do to rectify what he had done all those years. Are y'all following me?
Yeah.
Now, once again, the Latin father Jerome, who had risen to prominence within the Roman Catholic Church hierarchy, began working on a Latin translation of the Bible at the suggestion of Pope Damasus, I believe. After 20 years of toil, in the year 405 CE, the translation now known as the Vulgate was completed, 7 centuries after Septuagint translation. While Jerome used the Septuagint version along with the Hebrew in translating to Latin, most historians and biblical scholars conceded that the Vulgate can be changed with innumerable faults, inaccuracies, inconsistencies, and arbitrary dealing in particulars. This verse from Yashariah 14 and 12 stands in testimony to that fact. So here it is, a person who has no idea about Hebrew takes and says, well, we are going to interpret it, and we're going to define it, and we're going to do it our way. And we're going to replace this way with our way. We're going to replace and make Christians the top, and we're going to be that people. We're going to be the people that's going to save the world, and all of it's a lie. All of it is a lie. You can't. It's like taking me to a building and saying, "I'm going to give you the opportunity to own this building," and you don't even own the number one. You don't own the land. You don't have the deed to the place, and you don't even have the key. And you're taking me to this place, but you have nothing to give to me to tell me that this is legitimate. And that's what Christianity has done. All Christianity has done is give people false hopes. Hopes that are not real. Hopes that are not validated in the writings. This is not just this, and I'm not speaking against it because I hate Christians and hate. No, I don't hate anybody. But understand something. It's a problem when this is all people are pushing, and it's a lie. It's telling people that, you know what, when all this stuff comes to an end, you got to say place, and you don't. It's like telling somebody that's been away for a long time, oh, when you come here, come on, I got a place for you to stay. Then when they get there, there is no room for them. Now they have nothing. So it's important that we understand the things that our people have gone through and will continue to go through. But wisdom must prevail. It must prevail. Check that computer out. Jerome did not strictly translate the Ibram Helel ben Shachar, nor did he use the Greek Septuagint, Heophorus, which term by this Yom had fallen largely into disuse. Instead, he chose to base, listen at this, his translation largely on the Latin word Lucifus, which by Jerome's time had become an epithet for the Greek gods Apollo and Pan, who were worshipped alongside that of the first light of the dawn, the morning star Venus. The word Lucifer comes from the Latin lux, meaning light, and fair, to bear or bring, hence light bringer. But there is no scriptural justification for an arbitrary personification of that translated word. So it was something he put in there because he wanted to. Are y'all following me?
Yeah.
That's why, once again, it is important that we have the right information when studying. You cannot walk in truth, hear me well, and really follow it accordingly with a King James Bible. One of the first things happened that the Abba did for me when I got into truth was got me away from the King James Bible and put the writings in my hand that I needed to learn so that I could know my way of life and my culture. I'm going to say it again, if you have a King James Bible, get rid of it and get a Bible or the writings. I hate using the word Bible. Now, don't take that the wrong way. I'll explain that later. But the writings, it's important that we understand the writings, the scripture, the scrolls that were given unto us have been diluted, have been wrongfully translated. So it's important that you understand that we got to get the right information if we're going to grow. Farmers understand all plant food is not for all plants. There's certain plant foods that has been created. Tomatoes have a certain food that they eat. That tomato, it has on there, this food is for tomatoes, and you have that for squash. Then you have the general plant food that kind of anything can take. Will you specifically use that what has already been created for the plant to grow? Why? Because that's what is needed, because the research has been done. So from a seedling, you put this in there, it is going to grow it because it was created for the plant. For the plant. I have the Abrahamic covenant scriptures. I have the first ones. I have the PDF. And that is the one that I use. I also use the let me show you how this. Yes, the Nazarene version, so you all can see. Oh, y'all, can you see it? We'll also put it up. All right, it's yeah. Okay, can you see? All right. That's the version I use. I use two. Actually, I use three. I also go back and I look at the King James version um, to compare. The Sefer, no, that's not a good one. I've heard too many things. I've done a lot of research on those, and the Sefer is not a good one because it has too much in it, and it's very misleading. So I would say no. It's expensive, but it's not really worth it. I would just go with simple Hebrew Bible or writings like this one, and that is you can order it. You can order these. Where can you order them? Off of Amazon. This one, Amazon. Amazon carries them. I would say dig for it because one time they had this thing up there for what, $5,000. So I would, you have the dig. It's like you got to go look it up, go out, go back and look it up again, and then you'll get the reasonable price for it. But that is the one that I use, Amazon. You can get it off of Amazon. I think also Books a Million, not Books a Million. What is it? Barnes and Noble has it. I believe Barnes and Noble has it also. So that's another place I would suggest. Like I said, you got to have the right information in order to develop and grow, and to be able to parallel it with the King James version, so you can see how much was taken out and how much stuff has been just basically changed. Are y'all following me? All right. Now, once again, the problem encountered here is, in spite of the traditional theology handed down through hundreds of generations as a result of this arbitrary translation and promoted as truth, it cannot be stated enough that according to the wording of the original Hebrew, scriptures contain no character named Lucifer. So, if there is no character named Lucifer, then that means this was made up. And we run around talking about, you got all these people worshiping Lucifer, and he's not even, this person ain't even real. Not even real. Not real at all. Are y'all following me? Yahshua had never heard of such a being, nor had the apostles of Yahush Yam, or even Yahush himself. Lucifer characterized, now I won't say that because we know that he knew all things, but he didn't put that into practice. In other words, it didn't mean anything, so he didn't need it. Yes, I'll post it for you after class. I'll post it up there for you. So the thing of it is, he's all knowing. So why make mention of something that has no relevance? He don't need to. But his followers, this is the thing with us as a people, his followers knew his voice, and they knew that whatever he said to do, they did it. If he didn't say, they didn't bother with it because it was not important. Are y'all hearing me? Yeah. These are things that are important for us to understand. He didn't major on minor things. He didn't major on stuff that wasn't important. Sometimes we do. And that's where we end up faltering because we're trying to be all over the place. Do what we're supposed to do, and we will be baruch because of our obedience and because of us doing what he's commissioned us to do. Now, Lucifer, characterized as a persona who is a manifestation of the devil, is a much later invention. There is no association between Helel ben Shachar of Yashayah 14 and 12 and Shaitan. The proper name Lucifer does not find its way into any translation until Jerome's time, some 150 years after the influence of the writings of earlier Catholic theologians, Tertullian, 160-230 CE, and Origen, 185-254 CE, who have begun to symbolically read Shaitan into the story of the king of Babylon in Yashayah 14. So once again, they try to spiritualize everything. And once they remove this, now hear me well, when they removed Helel and put Lucifer and even Shaitan in the place, This is what threw this whole thing off, threw the writings off, because we spiritualized that. Now watch this, because we never read down to the other verses. We were so mystified and we were just so over inundated by what was said with the music, and sometimes not even with the music, just even calm, spoken by someone calmly. We never read down past that. We just stuck right there because we were like, oh man, they know what they're talking about, because of even that what was put in the writings. And because we really didn't know anything, we just kind of left it at that. And we just followed that. Are y'all following me?
Yeah.
Now, once again, it was symbolically placed in there. Now, and once again, read Shaitan into the story of the king of Babylon in Yashar 14. However, if read into its proper context, the prophet Yashar is taunting a man, the king of Babylon, in power at the time. Now he's talking to the king, and y'all know they had taunt songs. You remember anybody ever saw Shachar? Shachar the movie.
Yeah.
Now y'all remember how they fought? Anybody remember how they fought? A taunt. That's what they did. They did a taunt. They did a taunt. And Shachar was to the point, we ain't getting nowhere with this. We just going every day with these old raggedy flip-flops on. We can't do no war. The swords are too short. The shields are too short. We can't do any. No, the shields were too long and the spears were too short. He lengthened the spears and he shortened the shields. Why? Because he said, y'all, we will never get anywhere unless we do this thing. But it was a taunt song, and that's what he was doing. He was taunting them, and he was showing them, because Yashar was in a really bad state, just like now. Hard-headed. We won't line up and do, some of us, not all of us, because some of us are fighting daily to remain humble and to do what we're supposed to do to please the Abba. Are y'all following me?
Yeah.
All right. Now, once again, it's important that we understand the prophet Yashar is taunting a man, the king of Babylon, in power at the time. In the poetic and figurative language of the Hebrews, a star signifies an illustrious king or prince. The monarch here, referred to having surpassed all other kings in royal splendor, is compared to the harbinger of Yam, whose brilliancy surpasses that of the surrounding star. Are y'all hearing me? While there are those who claim that the real entity symbolically addressed in this passage is the persona Shaitan, there is no scriptural evidence to support this theory. To the contrary, Yashar 14 and 16 says, is this the man who made the earth tremble? There's a question asked. And because this question is asked, if this is Shaitan, we know Shaitan wasn't no man, right?
Yeah.
So once again, that blows that out of the water. But many times, because once again, listen, we've been so over inundated and we've been trained to listen to what we hear. And sometimes in listening, we're listening so hard that we don't look at anything else. And even when we read, because we've been trained to read but not see. We've been trained to hear but not hear. That's why it's important, according to Romans 12, 1 and 2, that first we present our bodies as a living sacrifice, kadesh and acceptable unto Abba Yahuwah, which is our reasonable service. Then we turn around and don't be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of our mind, so that we can present that what is perfect and excellent in the sight of Abba Yahuwah. Until there is a renewing up here and a changing, you will continue, we will all continue to see things that are not there and to dismiss things that are there, because that is a part of the training and the breaking down of our reasoning and understanding. Many of us have read these scriptures and verses over and over again and have not seen the things that we have seen now.
Right.
Why? Because we were taught to not see those things. We were taught to see from a narrow perspective. We were never taught to just look and say, okay, wait. This says at the end of that, a man. This is talking about Is this the man who made the earth tremble? That's asking a question. Is this the man? He's talking about a man. And we didn't even see that question there. We just ran over it like people don't stop at stop signs. They run past a stop sign and they kill a pole yield sign. No respect for none of the signs. Because we're not paying attention. But once again, y'all, that's the way we were trained. So we've got to undo that. We've got to undo that way in order to develop and grow and truly be able to come out with a better understanding and then a better a level of discernment and how we to govern and carry ourselves. Are y'all following me?
Yeah.
That's so important. Now listen what it says. Now, in Yashar 14 and 18, all the kings of the nation lie in glory, each in his own tomb, but you are cast out. Clear reference to a man, the king of a nation, not an archangel. A man, not an archangel. Archangels don't have children. Are y'all following me?
No.
No, but we once again we're so over inundated, and even now at times when you read stuff, even when I read stuff, I go back and read it again. I'll stop and I'll read it again, and sometimes I'll stay in that one particular area for days because I'm like, wait, I don't want to miss anything. You know, I was trained to miss these things. I was trained not to do these things, not because I didn't know at the time, but now I know better. So now I'm reading, and when you're reading, you pray and ask the Abba, take the scales off my eyes, unstop my ears so that I can hear and I can see the truth in your writings. Because I don't want to be misled any longer. I don't want to be walking, in a form of uprightness and denying the power thereof because I'm not understanding the writings. And I'm still trying to keep them in that Christian perspective. That's a problem. That's just like water, that's like, somebody telling you, I got some gas for you and it's water in the tank. It ain't watered down gas, it's water. Because you can't go nowhere. You will never go anywhere in Christianity. I don't care how many people say they're prospering. You can prosper physically all day long, but it ain't about physically prospering. It is about your soul prospering and being in your soul prospering and even your body prospering and you being in health with both of them. Even as your soul prospers, we're supposed to be a healthy people. So it's important that we understand. And if our souls are not prospering, physically and spiritually, if we're not prospering, then monetarily, we ain't prospering. Money answers all things that pertain to money.
That's right.
Money. They don't answer things that where money is not required. But if money is required, then it'll answer it. But if it's not, it won't. It will not. So it's important that we understand that. Now, I want to read this and read a little more of this, and then we're going to pray. And we have more, but we're going to save that for next time, Abba Yahuwah willing. Now, then Yahuwah's anger was aroused because he went. And the angel of Yahuwah took his stand in the way as an adversary against him. Bamidbar 22 and 22. Yet there is yet another reason why it makes no sense to read the devil into Yashar 14. The primary definition of the Ibram word shaitan in the original writings means surprise, adversary, or opposed, not devil. In spite of the current culture we live in, there is a difference between an opposing force and warfare. An adversarial force can simply be illustrated in the inability to bring two ends of a magnet together. So when the angel of Yahuwah is sent as an adversary, or here correctly translated from the Ibram, Shaitan, to oppose the prophet Balaam in Bamidbar 22 and 22, does that mean Yahuwah takes on the persona of an evil Shaitan? And so it's important that we understand, y'all, it's a lot of stuff that we have been misled into believing. Y'all have to understand the power we serve is powerful. He's very powerful. Read that. Well, my sister, my dearly beloved sister, the truth is the truth. I'm going to tell you like this in love. You can believe it or you can keep what you have. Um, it's not difficult. The reason it becomes difficult is because we are not willing to flow. You got to be like water in this walk. You cannot get yourself to a point that you get overwhelmed because change comes. Change is always coming. Change is a part of life. It is a part of life. You get older, you change. Everything on us, whether you're male or female, we go through a changing process. Trees change. The earth is changing and things change. It is not sent for you to become overwhelmed. It is for you to learn so that you can move. The information I've given to you is valid and sound information.
Time.
And there are things that we do not need. The Sefer is not a good scriptural writings for us as a people. It is not. The Besorah, many people have the Besorah. I have the Besorah. It is not my cup of tea. And I wouldn't say, that it is the best. But if it is keeping you in the writings and it is not taking away, but it is showing forth the right and it is showing the wrong and it is showing truth, then stick with it. But if it is wrong, then I'm going to call it wrong. If it's a spade, I'm going to call it a spade. I don't say anything here to overwhelm anybody, but I tell you what I tell you so that you will know truth. Because see, one thing about truth and making you free and not setting you free, to set something free is easy, but to make it free, that's a rigorous process. And in this way of life, you're going to have a rigorous process. Sometimes, like I said, we've got to be like water. You got to be willing to flow where the Ruach HaKodesh flows you. We become so to a point in our lives where we feel like, well, once I got this, I shouldn't have to change. As long as we're here and we are not with him and things have not changed over completely, then there are going to be times that you're going to have to change. There are times that you'll have to remove this and move that. Right. You keep them and you compare and you study. But the King James Bible, I will say this. You can keep that all day long. It's still wrong. I've just read to you and showed you the King James Bible is not for us as a people.
That's right.
They went in and they directly and purposely changed it up. From Yahuwah, exactly. It's important that we understand that. No, once again, it's important for us to understand in this way of life, we cannot, because remember, we are just now coming into truth. And when I mean just now coming into truth, I'm not talking about just yesterday. I've been walking in this for 7 years now. But I've come to understand that you cannot lock yourself in unless, hear what I'm saying, the Ruach HaKodesh has locked you into it. And when she locks you in, you know you're locked in. But there are times that in this walk, you've got to be flexible. You hear what I'm saying? You got to be flexible. You got to be willing to change. You got to be willing to study. You got to be willing to go back and say, okay, wait, maybe I did miss something. You've got to go back, because if you don't, there are times, once again, if you're being warned and said, don't use this because this is not good for us. This is the translation they put in here. It's wrong. And if they did it with one thing, you know they did it with other things. That is why our people are in the state they're in, because that's all we follow. Where they have master in the King James Version, servants and slaves, obey your masters. Our people were slaves. So when you read that to them, what do you think our people are going to do? In order to live right and to live saved and believe that they had a right to salvation, they're going to obey that, because that's the way the writings were put. That's their translation of the writings. So I'm saying, don't feel overwhelmed. That's what I'm saying. Don't feel overwhelmed, because when we think we finally grabbed this, exactly, it's called growing pains. You have to grow. You cannot just get overwhelmed, because you're going to find something out every day that's going to challenge you. Because every day that I'm studying, I find something new. Sometimes I have to step back and say, whoa. I have to step back and say, my goodness, whoa, 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 whoa. And pray, Abba Yahuwah, help me. Because I want to make sure that this decision or this choice I make is the right one. And if it's wrong, then correct me and I make the change. Because that's the only way we're going to grow. Being overwhelmed, we've got to mature to where these things don't overwhelm us, but cheer us up, because at least we know, hey, I'm growing. There's something new I got to get. There's something else I gotta do. Okay, I realize I got to change this. I got to do this. I got to do that. So it's important that we have to do these things. Very important. And so I say it in love. I do. And I agree with my aunt. These are growing pains for all of us. We're growing. And the more we grow and expand, it's going to be uncomfortable. But this being uncomfortable is a great thing. Because see, when we were in Christianity, we were so locked in, nothing made us uncomfortable. Nothing made us uncomfortable. We was just in it. We was like, hey, we going to heaven. The rapture's going to take us up out of here, and everybody else is going to stay, and we out of here. You can do what you want. We know we going to heaven, and ain't bet more who going to heaven. Ain't no such thing as rapture. That was even written in. That was written in. There is no rapture. So it's important. That's the thing. As long as it's constantly being uncovered, as long as deception is constantly being uncovered, you can grow. It's like weeds. Every time we go to our garden, no matter how many times we get those weeds out of there, we go right back. Guess what? It looked like they grow more. Because weeds don't need anything to grow. That's what they do, grow, because they're what? Weeds.
That's right.
But don't ever feel overwhelmed. Don't ever feel overwhelmed. And always remember that the Abba ahabs us so much that he's willing to take the time to show us the things that we need to go back and look at a second time so that we can grow. There are certain things, we used to take certain vitamins. You get to taking vitamins as you get older, and you just start taking stuff because it says vitamin. Well, all vitamins are not created equal, and all vitamins we don't need. So you just start popping pills. You think, oh, this is a good vitamin. Take this vitamin. Oh, take that vitamin. Take that vitamin. So I'm thinking, wait. No, I need to take a vitamin. That's really going to help me. You know what I'm saying? A vitamin that's fit for me. A vitamin that helps my body. Being a mature woman, you need certain vitamins. You just can't take, other vitamins. I don't like gummy stuff. So gummy bears and gummy worms, I don't need all that. I need something that's going to be a heavy hitter. You follow what I'm saying? For a woman, not a child. Understand, people call me young lady, and I appreciate that, but I'm a mature woman with a capital W. You follow what I'm saying? Yeah. So when you are a mature woman, you need mature things. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so you take it and you come back and say, oh, that didn't do anything for me. So I got to go back. I got to take this. Okay, that one was prescribed. And somebody told me that would be good for me, but it didn't do me like it was supposed to. So you learn as you go. And this is a learning process. The way to please Abba Yahuwah is just to please him, to do what you're supposed to. And that's how you will please him. You'll please him. And one thing about it, never let anybody make you feel double-minded. That's another thing. That's a lot of things that's going on out here where people will say one thing. Anytime I put something out there, I'm going to research it. And those of you that have seen my teachings know that I'll come back and I will repent, or I'll say, you know what? I grabbed that. That was wrong. I had to bring that back. I had to fix that because that was not right. It was information, but not the right kind of information. So it's important to understand that we grow and we grow together. We're in different positions in different areas of our lives, but growth is growth. And so that's important for us to understand. And in the time we're in, the Abba wants us to have things that are going to help us. Some of us are more mature than others, and some of us are in a place that we're developing more rapidly than others. And so it's important that we understand certain things. And once again, like I say, it is a process. It is a process, and that process sometimes comes with vigorous change, uh, twisting change. But everything that he brings to us is for our growth, not for our demise and not for our hurt, but to help us. And once again, knowing, as I've said before, you always have Mishpachah here. And when I tell you this, anybody that knows me knows that if I say you're a Mishpachah, you're a Mishpachah. When I say that, I mean that. But we're in a time now that the Abba is stripping us of things that are erroneous and things that have been erroneous for years. It's just like a shedding process in order to uh, get certain things. And something I've learned, once again, with mature women, B12 is important for us, or whatever we take, it has to be in our vitamins. Why? Because B12, it helps the body absorb. And if we're not absorbing things because there is something there that's blocking it, then we can be getting a whole lot of stuff and no absorption taking place. So you could call this a B12. And a B12, once again, helps the body to absorb, whether it's vitamins, minerals, food, it helps the body to be able to take it. And sometimes, once again, because we are more mature, you want to get things locked in, you want them secure. Sometimes even, being mature, you have to go back and say, okay, that's one of the things I'll table, and I'll move on to this and do what I have to do. But it's important that we understand so many things have been put in the writings that have caused us to be off, spiritually, socially, economically, even at times mentally. People have lost their minds because they couldn't comprehend, they couldn't grasp what was saying. And one thing about the Abba is that he ahabs us so much that he's not willing to let that happen to us as a people. It means family. He wants us, Mishpachah means family. He wants us to embrace truth. And in embracing truth, and truth embraces us back. Now, the embrace of truth is different than our embracing it. We do an embrace like this. Truth comes and grips you and grabs you and holds you like that. And so it's important that we understand these things. Very important. Excuse me. As mature women and men, that there are things that we need to take and things we need to do in order to absorb what we do and have. See, because younger women and younger men, they don't have a problem with absorption unless they have a medical problem. And most of our people are healthy. But once again, in this walk, people are at different levels. So people have a different absorption rate. People absorb differently. In other words, people's understanding of truth are different at different levels. And so some people understand at this level, some people understand at that level. But one thing I've come to understand is that in order to please the Abba, you got to walk in obedience. That's all he wants for us to do, is walk in obedience. And so when we do that, we're pleasing him, keeping the feast, keeping the Sabbath, ahabing our neighbor, as we love ourselves, and so forth. And that's important. And understand your neighbor is the your Ibram, Ak, and Akodi, brother and sister. That's your neighbor. I don't care if they're across the world. That's your neighbor, not the person next door to you. That's what it became in their definition. So I mean, basically what they're telling you, you got to love the racist next to you that's destroying your property. That's a lie. That is not what that means. Your neighbor is your brother and sister in truth. That's who your neighbor is. And so as we continue to develop and grow, these are the things that we go through. Yes, we will. We will put them up. Right before class is up, we will put them up. And like I say, I read from them. And the one thing that I do have about it is that it has the names, and it shows a lot of stuff in it that we as a people need. This is what I call our vitamins, our antibiotics, because we need these things so that we can grow. Because we many of us were in Christianity, we've gone through a horrible um, change. We are now coming to understand who we are. We are a beautiful people. Whether thick, thin, heavy melanated, brown skin. We are a people. We never compare ourselves with anybody, but we are now coming into this. Why? Because we see ourselves the reflection of who we are in the writings. When at a time we didn't see any of these things. And so now, with this process, that process, and the process once again of understanding these things, it's a lot. And that's why we have to renew this. That mind has to be renewed. Because until the mind is renewed into truth, that absorption won't take place. Because we'll constantly be trying to figure out, well, why is that? Well, why is this? Renew your mind to truth, and you will understand better why the things have happened to us as a people and continue to happen to us. But we're here for development and growth, always, always. And that's important to me. That is important to us as a congregation. That is important to us as the nation of Yahshua. And if that's not what is important to anybody else, they need prayer, because that's the importance of who we are as a people. And so it's very important that we do that. But once again, I want you all to know we'll hub you. We will put up the references to those books so that you can get it and read it and enjoy it. And when I tell you, when I got it, it was a gift to me. Um, and as I start reading it, I really enjoyed it because it replaces the names of Abba Yahuwah, and it just gives you a better insight, a better look, and better insight to truth. And so that's very important to us. Once again, I have you. We're praying for you. And if there are questions and I can get to them, I will. One thing about this congregation, if you have a question and we can get to it, we'll get to it. But if we don't get to it right then and there, no, we will get to it, because that's one thing we are. We try to make sure that we answer your questions accordingly, and we answer them speedily. Now, once again, if we don't get to you, you know that I can't stop. I had to keep moving, but I'll get to you after, and it may be something I need to address you in private, and then I'll address you in private. But know that we'll have you here, and that we're praying for you. And remember, go back, read again about Helel ben Shachar in Yashia 14 and 12. Read that whole chapter again, and read it not with the perception that that's Lucifer, a fallen archangel. And I promise you, when you read it, your eyes will pop open even the more, because the Abba will not have us ignorant concerning the devices of Shaitan. Never will he ever do it. Once again, I am Aliyah Yasharal, and I am the Mora Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom, a Bread Believe congregation located in South Carolina. I want you to remember, here at Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom, Hebraic Belief Congregation, this is the place where the Torah does the body excellent. Until next time, keep your head up, keep your shoulders squared, and remember, the push is on. Work smarter, not harder. Also, remember, you've been touched by Champion TV, a place where the champions reside. And it is so. And it is so. And it is so.
This is